betrayal doesn't come with a warning. It doesn't creep up slowly, giving you time to adjust to the idea, to prepare yourself for the blow. No, betrayal is like outbreak in the dark, sudden, deafening, and irreversible. I never thought of myself as the kind of man who could be blindsided. I paid attention. I noticed things. I believed that if something were wrong in my marriage, I would feel it before I ever saw it. I was wrong. And when the truth hit me, it wasn't a gradual unraveling. It came all at once, immediate, brutal, leaving no room for doubt. It was a Tuesday evening. A normal, unremarkable day. And then, just like that, everything changed. The sun had started to set, casting a deep orange glow across the yard. The heat of the day lingered in the air, clinging to my skin as I wiped sweat from my forehead. I had been outside for the past hour, fixing a loose latch on the shed and tidying up the backyard. Anna had said she'd be out with friends that evening, so I hadn't expected her to be home yet. That's why, at first, I didn't think much of it when I heard something coming from inside the house. A faint sound, barely noticeable beneath the usual noises of the neighborhood. I straightened up, ears straining, my mind automatically filtering through possibilities. The TV? Maybe Anna had come home early? And then I heard it again. A laugh. Not just any laugh. Her laugh. But she wasn't alone. There was a second voice. A man's voice. Low. Familiar. Something inside me tightened. I wasn't the paranoid type. I had never been the kind of husband who read too much into things or assumed the worst without cause. But there was something in that laughter. An intimacy. An ease. A kind of familiarity that didn't belong between a married woman and another man. For a few seconds, I stood completely still, every muscle in my body locked in place. My mind scrambled for explanations, searching for anything that would make sense. Maybe she had invited a friend over. Maybe it was a call on speakerphone. But then. A thud. A muffled gasp. A playful squeal. And then, the words that shattered everything. What if he comes home early? A pause. Then Anna's voice, light, teasing. Don't worry. He never does. The world tilted. I felt it before I fully understood it, the slow, creeping numbness spreading through my limbs, the sudden heaviness in my chest. I replayed her words in my head, again and again, as if I had misheard. He. Me. She was talking about me. Not just talking, reassuring him. Because she wasn't afraid of getting caught. Because she knew that I wouldn't come home early. The casual confidence in her voice twisted something deep in my gut. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a drunken one-night slip-up. This was planned. This had been happening for long enough that she felt comfortable joking about it. A slow, electric hum filled my ears, drowning out everything else. The warm glow of the sunset, the distant hum of traffic, the quiet rustling of the wind in the trees, none of it felt real anymore. I knew, in that moment, that my marriage had already ended. I just hadn't been informed yet. I don't know how long I stood there, listening. Long enough to confirm what I already feared. Long enough to hear the kind of sounds that no husband should ever have to hear in his own home. And yet, I didn't move. I didn't barge through the door. I didn't demand answers. I didn't even breathe. Because something inside me, something cold and unfamiliar, told me to wait. Rage was easy. Rage was what they expected. What if he comes home early? They had already imagined how I would react. They had pictured me storming in, screaming, confronting them in a blind, emotional frenzy. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. No. I was going to be smart about this. I had been blind before. But now? Now, I was watching. I turned away from the house. Not because I was leaving. But because I had a plan to make. And when I was done, they would regret everything. I walked away from the house, but I didn't go far. I needed time to think, but I also needed to see. I moved to the side of the yard, where the lights from the windows couldn't reach me, and stood still. The laughter had faded, but I could still hear movement inside. I focused on every sound, trying to picture what was happening. Anna's voice was softer now, muffled by distance. His voice, Michael's, was closer to the back of the house. I took slow, careful steps toward the side of the house where our bedroom window was. The curtains were drawn, but the light inside was on. I knew this window well. The glass wasn't thick. If I got close enough, I could hear everything. I leaned in, my hands steady, my breath controlled. "Relax, we have time," Anna's voice said. "He won't be home for hours." A moment of silence. Then Michael chuckled. "Still, don't you feel a little guilty?" She laughed again, softer this time. "You weren't saying that last night." Michael said something else, but I didn't hear it. My mind was too full, my thoughts too loud. I could picture them. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop myself. Anna, standing close to him, smiling like she used to smile at me. The way she used to look when she was excited, when she was happy. How long had this been going on? I had to be careful not to let my anger take over. If I reacted now, I'd lose the upper hand. They thought I was gone. They thought they were safe. I needed to know everything before I made my move. I backed away from the window and moved toward the fence, where I had a better angle of Michael's car. It was parked just far enough from the driveway that no one would see it from the street. This wasn't the first time he had done this. He was careful. She was careful. But not careful enough. I checked my watch. Anna had told me she'd be out with friends until late. It wasn't even 7 yet. That meant she had lied about where she was going. That meant this was planned. I stayed outside for a few more minutes, watching, listening. Then, when I was sure I had heard enough, I walked toward the side gate and left the yard. I needed to go somewhere I could think. Somewhere I wouldn't be surrounded by the house I thought was mine. I got into my truck and drove. The streets were quiet. I passed the local gas station, the grocery store, all the familiar places I had driven past for years. But everything felt different now. I pulled into a parking lot a few miles from home and turned off the engine. Now that I was away from the house, the reality of what I had just learned started to set in. Anna was cheating on me. Not just once. Not a mistake. This was planned. This was something she had done more than once. And Michael. A man I had trusted. A man who had been in my home. I thought about the times we had talked, the times we had sat in the backyard, drinking beer and discussing work, life, meaningless things. Had he been sleeping with Anna then? Had he laughed at me behind my back? I clenched the steering wheel. I couldn't let this go unanswered. Divorce wasn't enough. Breaking things off wasn't enough. They had planned this. Lied to me. Betrayed me in my own house. I needed to think carefully. If I confronted Anna now, she would deny it. She would lie. I needed more proof. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was one person I could trust right now. I called Eric. Eric and I had been friends since college. He was the kind of man who never sugarcoated things, never told you what you wanted to hear. That's why I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" I hesitated for half a second. Then I said, "Anna is cheating on me." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" "I'm parked near the old diner," I said. "I'll be there in 10. I hung up and stared at the dashboard. Eric was the only person outside of Anna who really knew me. He had been my best man at our wedding. He had been there when we bought the house. He had been there through everything. I had no idea what I was going to say to him. Eric pulled up next to me 10 minutes later. He got out of his car, walked over, and opened the passenger side door without asking. He sat down and looked at me. "Tell me everything." I told him. I told him about the laughter, the voices, the words. When I was done, Eric exhaled slowly. Michael? I nodded. Jesus Christ. We sat there for a few seconds in silence. Then he said, "What are you gonna do?" I stared at my hands. I don't know yet. Do you have proof? Not enough. Then you can't do anything yet, Eric said. You can't go to her and accuse her without evidence. She'll lie. She'll turn it on you. You need something solid. I knew he was right. But waiting felt impossible. What do you want to do? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't just want to leave. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling. I wanted her to know that she had destroyed something she could never get back. Eric watched me. He had always been able to read me better than anyone. You're not thinking straight, he said. I'm thinking clearer than I ever have. He exhaled through his nose. Look, man. You want revenge? Fine. But do it smart. Don't let them see you coming. He was right. Rage was easy. Rage was expected. But I wasn't going to be what they expected. I started the truck. I need to find out everything before I make my move. Eric nodded. Then let's get started. I drove. Not home. Not yet. Because the game had just begun. I sat in the truck outside my house for almost an hour, watching the lights from the windows, thinking about what I had to do next. Michael's car was gone now, but that didn't change anything. Anna was inside, going about her night like nothing had happened. She had no idea that I knew. No idea that everything between us had already been destroyed. Eric had been right. I needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable. Something she couldn't lie her way out of. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. She'd cry, act offended, turn it back on me. Maybe she'd tell me I was being paranoid. Maybe she'd pretend to be hurt that I didn't trust her. She'd use every trick she had to protect herself. But if I had evidence? If I laid it all out in front of her where she couldn't escape it? Then I'd see the real Anna. I walked up to the house and unlocked the door. The living room was quiet, the soft glow of the lamps making everything look normal. I could hear the TV from the bedroom. She was watching one of her shows, just like any other night. I took my time walking down the hall. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. When I stepped into the bedroom, Anna looked up from the bed and smiled. Hey, you're home early. I stared at her. She looked exactly the same as she always did. Hair pulled back, wearing one of my old shirts, curled up with the remote in her hand. She had no idea that I had been standing outside just hours ago, listening to her whisper to another man in this same house. She had no idea that everything had changed. I sat on the edge of the bed. What did you do today? She blinked at me. What? Today, I said. What did you do? She hesitated for half a second. Then she shrugged. Went out with the girls for a little while. Just a normal day. She didn't even flinch. Didn't hesitate, didn't shift her weight, didn't look away. She was that good at lying. I nodded. Where'd you go? Just to dinner. You know, usual spot. She was completely calm. No nervousness, no edge to her voice. If I hadn't known the truth, I wouldn't have suspected a thing. I leaned back against the headboard. Did you see Michael today? That got a reaction. A small one, but it was there. A slight pause before she turned to look at me fully. What? Michael, I repeated. Did you see him today? She let out a short laugh. Why would I see Michael? I watched her face. There was nothing there. No cracks, no tells. If I didn't already know, I might have let it go. But I knew. I knew. I let the silence stretch. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Anna's fingers curled slightly against the blanket. It was subtle, but I caught it. "Why are you asking?" she said, her voice lighter now, like she was trying to turn the conversation into a joke. I let out a small breath. "Just curious." She relaxed. That was how confident she was. That was how secure she felt in her lies. I let it go for now. I pushed myself off the bed and walked into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. I didn't need to say anything else yet. I had already seen everything I needed to see. Anna was never going to tell me the truth. Which meant I had to get it myself. The next day, I set everything up. Anna left in the morning like usual, kissing me on the cheek before heading out the door. She didn't act any differently. That meant she still had no idea. That was fine. By the time she got back, I would have exactly what I needed. I had never needed to spy on my wife before, but now that I did, I realized how easy it was. Her laptop was in the office, left open on the desk. I sat down and started going through everything. Emails. Calendar. Messages. She had deleted all her texts. That told me something. If there was nothing to hide, there'd be no reason to erase anything. But she had forgotten about her email. There was a message from a few days ago, buried beneath work notifications. A confirmation for a hotel reservation. I clicked it open. Her name was on it. The date was from last week. It was a weekday. She had told me she was staying late at work. The hotel wasn't far. Just a short drive from here. She had planned this. That was all I needed. I closed the laptop and stood up. By the time she got home, I would be waiting. I heard the front door open around 6. I was sitting in the living room, the hotel email printed out and folded neatly on the coffee table. Anna walked in, tossing her purse on the chair. "Hey," she said casually. "How was your day?" I didn't answer. She turned to me, and her smile faltered. "What?" I picked up the paper and unfolded it. I held it up so she could see. She frowned. "What's that?" I didn't say anything. I just watched her. She stepped closer, hesitating now. When she got close enough to read it, her face changed. Her lips parted slightly. A breath in. Eyes widening just a fraction before she caught herself. I had never seen her real reaction to being caught before. This was it. She looked up at me. "Where did you get that?" Not "this isn't what it looks like." Not "I can explain." Just "where did you get that?" I knew she had been caught before she even said it. I leaned forward. "Do you want to tell me what this is?" She crossed her arms, her shoulders tightening. "Are you going through my stuff now?" I laughed once. "You're really going to try and turn this on me?" She exhaled, pressing her fingers to her temple like she was trying to decide how to play this. Then, finally, she sighed and sat down across from me. "Okay," she said. "Fine. You want to talk? Let's talk." I stared at her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. She looked annoyed. Like she was inconvenienced by the fact that she had been caught. I had never felt more disgusted in my life. I stayed quiet, waiting for her to speak first. She shrugged. "It's not like I meant for this to happen." I clenched my jaw. "How long?" She looked away. "Does it matter?" I gritted my teeth. "How long?" She hesitated. "Then, a few months." I laughed, shaking my head. "A few months." She exhaled, like she was tired. "Look, I don't expect you to understand." I slammed my fist against the table, and she flinched. "Understand?" I said. My voice was calm, but I could feel the fire in my chest. You've been sleep with our neighbor in my house, and you think I should try to understand? She didn't speak. I leaned back. You planned this, I said. You made sure I wouldn't be home. You lied to me over and over again. She still didn't say anything. And that was it. That was all I needed. I stood up. I'll be gone by the weekend, I said. Anna's eyes widened. Wait. I turned and walked toward the bedroom. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't say anything at all. And that told me everything I needed to know. I packed a bag that night, just enough to get me through the next few days. I didn't plan on staying in the house any longer than necessary. The air inside felt tainted. Every piece of furniture, every framed photo on the walls, every little detail I had once loved about this place now felt like a lie. Anna hadn't tried to stop me. She hadn't begged, hadn't cried, hadn't even attempted to fix what she had broken. She had just watched as I walked past her and went to the bedroom. That was enough proof that she had never felt guilty about any of it. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't owe her that. I only told her I'd be back in a few days to deal with everything else. She just nodded and went back to scrolling through her phone like we weren't standing at the edge of something irreversible. I got in my truck and drove. Eric was waiting for me when I pulled up to his place. He didn't say anything at first, just took one look at me and nodded toward the fridge. I grabbed a beer and sat down on his couch. "What's the plan?" he asked. I took a sip before answering. "I want her to lose more than just me." Eric leaned back in his chair. "All right. How far are you willing to go?" I thought about it. The truth was, I had already been thinking about this since the moment I caught them. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was calculated. Anna had made sure I was out of the way. She had relied on my trust. That's what made it worse. I wanted her to feel what it was like to lose control. I wanted her to watch everything slip through her fingers, just like I had. "She cheated in my house," I said. "I'm taking the house." Eric grinned. "Now we're talking." We spent the next 2 hours going through my options. The house was in both of our names, but I had paid for almost everything. I handled the mortgage. I paid the bills. The finances were all under my control. And Anna? She didn't have a clue about any of it. She had never paid attention to how the money was managed. She never checked the accounts, never asked questions. She had assumed, like everything else, that I would always take care of it. That was her first mistake. I pulled up my bank accounts and went through every transaction. I already knew what I was looking for, but seeing it laid out in front of me confirmed what I had suspected. Anna had been spending money on him. Dinners. Hotels. Small purchases that added up. There was a clear pattern in the dates. Every time she had told me she was working late, there was a charge somewhere else. I had the proof I needed. I called my lawyer the next morning. I didn't tell Anna what I was doing. There was no point in giving her a warning. By the time she realized what was happening, it would already be done. Over the next few days, I moved money out of our joint account into my personal one. I left just enough so it wouldn't raise suspicion, but the majority of it was now out of her reach. Then, I canceled her credit card. I froze the accounts she had access to. I had control of everything, and she wouldn't realize it until it was too late. I also made sure Michael's wife knew exactly what was going on. I had debated whether or not to tell her. Part of me thought she deserved to find out on her own. But I also knew that if our positions were reversed, I'd want to know. So I sent her the evidence. I didn't leave my name. I didn't need to. The next day, I drove back to the house. Anna was in the kitchen when I walked in. She looked up from her phone and gave me a tired sigh. "Are we really doing this?" I dropped a folder on the table. "You might want to read that." She glanced at it but didn't move. "What is it?" "Divorce papers." She froze for half a second. Then she forced a laugh. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." She scoffed. "You really think you can just decide this without talking to me?" I didn't say anything. She opened the folder and started flipping through the pages. I watched her face as she scanned the documents. The longer she read, the more her expression shifted. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Her eyes narrowed. "Wait," she muttered. She flipped back a page, then another. "What is this?" "That's the settlement," I said. "You get nothing." She looked up, and for the first time since this started, I saw real anger on her face. "You can't do this." "I can," I said. And I did. Her jaw clenched. "You don't have the right to take everything." "You had the right to cheat in my house?" I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she didn't have a response. I leaned forward. "I have proof. Bank statements. Transactions. Dates that line up with the nights you said you were working. You can try to fight this, but you won't win." She stood up, pushing the chair back. "This isn't fair." "Neither was what you did," I said. She shook her head, laughing bitterly. "You think this makes you better than me? You think you're some kind of hero for screwing me over?" I didn't answer. Because I wasn't a hero. I was just a man who had finally stopped being blind. She grabbed her phone and stormed out of the kitchen. I didn't follow. I had nothing left to say to her. A few hours later, I got a text from Eric. "Michael's wife just kicked him out. Looks like your little message got through." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned off my phone and walked out of the house. Anna could stay there for now. But soon, she'd be gone. And when she left, she'd be walking away with nothing. 3 days passed before Anna finally decided to confront me. For 72 hours, there was nothing but silence. No texts, no calls, no desperate attempts to explain herself. It was as if she thought ignoring it would make it go away. Or maybe she had convinced herself that I would calm down, that I would eventually come to her and start the conversation she didn't want to have. She was wrong. The silence was fine with me. It gave me time to put things in order, to make sure that when we finally spoke, she wouldn't have any room to twist the situation in her favor. She would have to face exactly what she had done, without a way out. But I knew her too well to think she would stay quiet forever. She was waiting. Calculating. Deciding how to play this. That was what our marriage had been to her, in the end. A game. A long con that she thought she could get away with. So when I heard her car pull into the driveway that evening, I knew exactly what was coming. I was sitting in the living room when she walked in, still dressed in the same clothes she had left in that morning. She set her purse down carefully, like she was trying to act normal, like she thought this was just another day. I didn't say a word. She turned to face me, eyes scanning my face for some kind of reaction. "You're home early," she said, her voice forced and casual. I didn't move. "I live here." Something flickered across her face. She had been expecting me to leave. She forced a breath through her nose. "Are we going to talk, or are you just going to sit there and act like I don't exist?" I leaned back in the chair, watching her. "Talk about what?" She exhaled sharply. "About us." "There is no us," I said. Her jaw clenched. "That's it? You've just decided? You don't even want to hear me out?" I laughed, shaking my head. "I heard plenty. I heard you with him." She flinched but quickly recovered. "You don't understand." "No, Anna. You don't understand." I stood up slowly, meeting her gaze. "I gave you everything. I trusted you. And you threw it away. Not once, not twice, but for months." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I took a step closer. "Tell me, Anna, was it worth it?" She swallowed hard. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You didn't care if you did. Her hands curled into fists. I made a mistake. No, I said, this was a choice. Silence. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, glancing at the divorce papers sitting on the coffee table. I had left them out on purpose. So that's it, she muttered. You just decided everything on your own. I crossed my arms. Were you planning to let me make any decisions when you were sneaking around behind my back? She didn't answer. I nodded toward the papers. You signed those, and we're done. Her breathing grew heavier. You're really trying to take everything from me? I shrugged. You should have thought about that before you screwed our neighbor. Her eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I let out a slow breath. No, Anna. There's nothing about this that I enjoy. She scoffed. You think you're some kind of victim? I stared at her. Aren't I? She hesitated, like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. I watched her for a long moment. Tell me the truth, Anna. If I hadn't caught you, would you have stopped? She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then, slowly, she closed it again. And that was my answer. I nodded. That's what I thought. She exhaled, shaking her head. What do you want me to say? The truth, I said. She let out a bitter laugh. The truth? The truth is, you weren't enough for me anymore. The words hit hard, but I didn't let it show. She saw the change in my expression, though, and for the first time, she looked almost regretful. Almost. I didn't want to hurt you, she said again, softer now. I stayed quiet for a moment, then sat back down. You already did, I said. Now it's your turn. She crossed her arms. What's that supposed to mean? You're going to lose everything, I said plainly. The house. The money. The life you built with me. Her eyes darkened. You don't have the right. I have every right, I cut in. And you gave it to me. She looked at the divorce papers again, staring at them like they were something foreign, something she had never expected to see. I can fight this, she said quietly. You can try, I replied. But I have evidence. Emails. Bank statements. Hotel records. She swallowed. You really hate me that much? I sighed, running a hand over my face. I don't hate you, Anna. But I'll never forgive you. She sat down across from me, rubbing her temples. I never thought it would end like this. Neither did I admitted. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she reached for the pen. She hesitated, staring at the papers. Then, with a sharp inhale, she signed. I took the papers and stood up. Now we're done. She didn't move. I walked toward the hallway, toward my bedroom. Where are you going? She asked, voice tight. I stopped at the doorway and turned back. To bed. She frowned. You're not leaving? I shook my head. No, Anna. This is my house. You leave. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She just sat there, staring at me, finally realizing that she had lost. I turned away and closed the door behind me. Anna didn't leave right away. I had given her the papers, told her it was over, and made it clear that the house was mine. But she still lingered, still acted like she had some claim to the life she had destroyed. I had expected as much. Someone like her, someone who could lie that easily, who could betray without hesitation, wasn't going to walk away without trying to salvage something for herself. For the next few days, she moved around the house like a ghost, barely speaking to me. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was a quiet acknowledgement that there was nothing left between us. The marriage was end. She was just waiting to see if she could keep something from the wreckage. She didn't try to apologize again. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't say she regretted anything. I don't know if it was pride, or if she simply didn't think I was worth the effort anymore. Maybe in her mind, I had already been discarded. It didn't matter. I had no interest in hearing excuses. On the fourth day, she finally spoke. How long are we going to keep doing this? I was in the kitchen, drinking my coffee, barely acknowledging her presence. Doing what? She sighed. Living like this. In the same house, pretending the other person isn't here. I set my cup down. You don't have to be here. Her eyes narrowed. You really expect me to just leave? It's not an expectation. It's a fact. She crossed her arms. You're unbelievable. No, Anna. You are. She scoffed. You know what? Fine. I'll go. I didn't say anything. I don't know what you want from me, she snapped. Do you want me to suffer? Is that it? I finally looked at her. You did this to yourself. She exhaled sharply. You won't even try to understand. There's nothing to understand, I said. You cheated. You lied. And you would have kept doing it if I hadn't found out. She flinched but recovered quickly. You think you're so righteous? I stared at her. No. I just think I deserve better. Her jaw tightened. I don't need you to kick me out like I'm some kind of criminal. Then don't act like one. She let out a bitter laugh. I hope you enjoy your little victory. I picked up my coffee again. It's not a victory, Anna. It's justice. She shook her head and turned away. I'll be out by the weekend. I didn't respond. Because for the first time in weeks, I didn't need to say anything. She knew she had lost. And that was enough. Anna packed her things over the next 2 days. She didn't make a scene, didn't try to argue anymore. She was cold, detached, like she had already decided I wasn't worth the fight. It was fine by me. The sooner she was gone, the sooner I could move on. The house felt lighter after she left. For the first time in a long time, it actually felt mine. And I was finally free.